My big suggestion to students, particularly through high school, is
you can do anything.
Choose it for you, not for it is worth
it. Just focus on the next step.
Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Don't be afraid.
As long as you're doing something.
That is such good advice.
I don't think I could see myself doing anything
It's a challenging life.
Student nights, Wednesday to Saturday.
I worked on that house.
I racked up every single dollar of debt that I
I
possibly
think there's a lot of pressure on high school.
Yeah, I
kids
just
these days,
love working outside.
And if money is something that you care a lot
In
about.
hindsight,
I've also been a very indecisive
But you
person.
keep looking for roads that have been less
It
travelled.
was just that moment that I knew what I wanted to do. So nothing else is going to change that.
Welcome to the guest speaker.
Yeah, well, let's start. Thank you so much for helping us out and supporting us. I've never actually had a radiographer come to my classroom, so I don't have the background as well. So this will be really interesting for me. And even more special is your 28th birthday today. So I can't believe when Grace sent you the invite that you clicked yes, because I thought you should be going out for dinner or celebrating. So thank you for being here on your birthday. Wonderful. So just to introduce you to everyone and put in context your qualifications. You completed a Bachelor of Applied Science, Medical Imaging Technology with UCOL in Palmerston North. And that'll be one thing we'll touch on is the why the Palmerston North, or where the options are. Because there would have been some reasoning behind that. You did clinical placements at Waikato Hospital to eventually become a radiographer, I presume is your title. And we're really interested today how your schooling related or supported that career choice and how you've found that career choice in terms of stress, in terms of fulfillment, love, joy in your life and all the rest of it. Which is ironic because I think, you were up on the ski fields in Whakapapa, which is that could be gold for us and for you, that you've just decided that that's where you're going to do some of your work. So we'll also, I'm sure, hear about that tonight. Always slip in a story, and I don't know whether you've ever experienced this before, but I had to get an MRI on my rotator cuff on my shoulder. Now, I don't know how many people understand when they hear the MRI word, they know exactly what it is. And so I naively, I'm talking only 5 or 6 years ago, walked in and I was convinced someone put something over your arm to take an image. And so when they said, do you want music on? Do you want headphones? Are you going to be okay? I said, look, I'm fine. I'll just go to sleep. Because if I lie down, I go to sleep. So I laid down and next minute I started moving backwards. And I hadn't even put 2 and 2 together that I was going inside this machine. And I felt I couldn't move. I felt it was, and they said, don't move. And I was petrified. I think an hour later, I came out sweating, really quite anxious. So is that something that's normal, that someone wouldn't know, particularly an older person like me?
Oh, absolutely. We spend a lot of time explaining to patients the difference between the different kinds of, we call them modalities, but the different kinds of scans that you can have. But absolutely, patients are like, I've had this before, you scanned me 3 months ago. And I'm like, did the machine make lots of banging and clanging? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, MRI scan, this is the CT scanner or the X-ray. So yeah, we do spend a lot of time essentially coaching or teaching patients about what the experience is today and what we're kind of trying to find with what we're doing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I'd have to be sedated if I went again, that's for sure. It was petrifying. So look, just a little bit of background, because what I've liked to do recently is sort of Google what your job is, because I suppose that's where kids go, and I want to make sure either it's right or you can go, well, yeah, that's sort of right, but not really, and all the rest of it. But when you look up radiographer, there's 1,635 full-time medical imaging technologists, they call them. It's real high demand, mainly because of the aging population situation. So we have more and more people, with ailments. Apparently, you can earn between $63,000 and $118,000 higher for more specialist roles like MRI, nuclear medicine technologists. I don't know the difference. We'll ask you soon. And it's around that 3 to 5 years of training. And what you do is you do the pre-information, which you sort of just touched on, where you'd say to someone like me, this is what we're doing today. So that's part of your job and what will happen and what I would expect. So I suppose that's the care stuff. Then you prepare the patients for and the equipment. So you're doing all of that stuff. Your diagnostic images of injuries and disease is what you're trying to capture. You prepare and administer radioactive materials or X-ray dye for patients. You check the quality of the images taken, and then you write reports. Maybe myth, I don't know. And your real skills are around human anatomy, physiology, pathology, safety of radiation equipment and material. And I think one of the following you need to be qualified: a Bachelor of Medical Imaging, a Bachelor of Applied Science, or a Bachelor of Health Science, then to be registered with the New Zealand Medical Foundation of Technologies Board or something, that you become registered. Again, we'll talk to you soon about that. Your subjects really are going to be around biochem, English, health, maths, physics, they tell me. And today we're really after your sort of demands of your jobs, your positives, your negatives, maybe the changes in technology you've seen over your lovely 28 years. Well, not that you've been working in it that long, but you know what I mean. And the career opportunities available for kids. It is interesting. I've had this requested by at least 7 or 8 kids. So it's not like it's an insignificant, there's a lot of kids. And I suspect in my community in Whitianga is because they have one here. So maybe it's with there being one in a local community, they see it, they understand it, and you're going to solve that problem for kids who are elsewhere and don't have them by sharing today. So look, thank you for turning up on your birthday, and welcome to the guest speaker. Can you, Monique, reflect on your education and maybe how those subjects you did at school and that experience led you to where you got to or helped you with that? Please.
Yeah. And so I am a Cambridge kid, primary, Cambridge Middle School, and then Cambridge High School. Definitely, I think I took the more kind of sciencey route during high school. I suppose my subject choices got a little bit messy. So I was in the advanced stream coming through high school, and the guinea pig year of them adding a couple more subjects in. So I think the year before us, they'd done geography, and I was the first year of them taking science and maths, which made things a little bit like higgledy-piggledy in terms of like how things went. So I did essentially 2 years worth of level 1 science, and I sat level 1 NCEA maths twice because of scheduling conflicts. But at the end I came out with, I did physics, chemistry, calculus, geography, art, and English was I think what I ended up with my level 3 NCEA. So course requirements for us at the time were having physics, maths, and I think English. And they liked you to have biology, which I didn't do, and it didn't hurt me at all. Pretty sciencey route for me. In my early years at school, I thought I wanted to do food technology, which is why I picked the subjects that I did. Had a little crisis around year 11 that I didn't want to do food technology anymore, and kind of had to figure out how my subjects worked in terms of what I could do after school. Summary of high school, I guess.
So Monique, what were you like? That's your academics. What else were you into as a kid? Because that may help us understand. I've got a question coming after that. What else did you get up to as a kid? What were you into?
I did a lot of dance and gymnastics through my childhood years. By the time I got to high school, I was doing target shooting, which was a little bit weird, but I enjoyed it. But definitely kind of stuck around probably the more arty scene in high school. Definitely enjoyed doing like stage challenge productions and helping out with kind of the more art side of things. So I really enjoyed that. It's probably the quite visual part of my brain really enjoys art and has always come back to that as a hobby. But I also come from quite a visual arty family as well. So museum gallery kind of trips and all that sort of thing. So yeah, enjoyed my arts, enjoyed dancing, still enjoy dancing.
See that on your social media with ballroom and all sorts of really cool stuff. It's interesting you say about your art, because when I didn't actually read a piece of my thing, which was who's this for? And I actually felt it was a real visual thing, that, obviously if you go teaching, you might argue it's audio, someone who just wants to hear their own voice sort of thing. Whereas with you, you're really articulately using your eyes to analyze and comprehend things. So yeah, there could be that connection there. Can I ask, when you said you thought you were doing one thing and then, oh no, disaster, and that would face a lot of kids, maybe in through guest speaker roles, suddenly they realize, oh damn, I'm not going to be that after all, it doesn't suit me. Where did you go to make the commitment to go head off to Palmerston? What source did you use? How did you choose radiography?
So I had my little crisis, and then I think it would have been year 12. They kind of started to get a lot more of that careers advice, and your path, like your university pathway stuff, starts coming at you kind of in year 12. I'll admit to taking the opportunity to have a day off school and going to some of the careers things that they, like a careers day. So I still thought I wanted to do something sciencey. I just wasn't sure what. I did a dairy science day. That was interesting. Definitely not my cup of tea. And then there was another one up at Waikato Hospital for like health careers. And I went to that going, I don't want to work in health. I'm not interested in being a nurse. I don't think I could manage the study of becoming a doctor. My sister is 2 years older than me. And she, at the time, was on a gap year, but was looking at doing occupational or therapy or social work. So naturally, being the younger sister, I felt that I couldn't do that because that was her thing. And she's definitely gifted in that area where I'm not. So I went to this health careers day, essentially just to have a day off school. And there was a guy who was a radiographer, and he jumped up, super, super cool guy. I actually ended up working with him later on down the track, but just really passionate about what he did, and it sounded really interesting to me. So I went away, did a little bit more research. At the time, our high school had like a mentorship program where you could join it and write down kind of what job you thought you wanted to have, and they would match you up with somebody in the industry. I got matched up with manager of the radiology department down in Rotorua Hospital, and he took me to work with him for a day, and so I got to kind of experience what it was like. And at that stage, I just went, okay, this seems cool. I guess I just commit and give it a go. So away I went, signed up to be a radiographer or do the degree, and it has so far worked out.
Yeah, this is blowing my mind a little bit, actually, Monique, because a lot went right for you. Like, I mean, had you not met the cool guy, you'd just met someone else who couldn't be asked and they weren't overly into their job. That was gone. Clearly, your parents must be supportive. I mean, you're suggesting you took days off school like it was a bad thing. It's definitely not. But and then this mentorship that was operating, and I'm also reflecting on kids in other parts of the country who have none of that. They don't have the careers advisor. The parents don't know, they may be invested, they may not. Not that parents aren't invested, but they might not have the experience or the opportunity you got. The mentorship was pretty special. I don't think that still exists. Yeah, there's too much luck and opportunity that it's just doing my head in a little. Good on you.
I am incredibly fortunate and grateful that it all kind of worked out in the end. Because I don't want to call myself impulsive, but I tend to make decisions pretty quickly and just stick to it and give it a go. So it was initially quite a quick decision, and it has fortunately worked out, and I do actually like my career. So
what's the timeline then? We have this little crisis in year 11, and then you go through all these different open days and talking to people in the mentorship. At what point in the year, is it year 12 or 13, do you apply and then get accepted? So like, I'm locked in.
I must have done the careers day towards the end of my year 12. Kind of started considering it, and then in year 13 we got that mentorship opportunity. So I would have done the hospital visit probably, I want to say, in the first half of the year. And then to get into the degrees around New Zealand, the application cutoff is normally around August or September. Yeah, you're starting to look at getting all your applications in, definitely organising yourself throughout July. So they're going in time. I missed out applying to one of the schools because they changed their application date and I didn't realise. So check the websites. Make sure you know when the close date is. So I went to UCOL, so it's the Polytechnic down in Palmerston North. Part of their application process is that you have to do a hospital visit, because I guess they found over the years a lot of people applied to the degree without knowing kind of what the job is and what the extent of it was. You have a hospital visit. They fill out a little feedback form on you that goes in as part of your application process. Hospital visit has to be done sometime towards the end of the year. I don't think it has to be done by the application date, but it's definitely part of the application process. Or it was October for me, they did a round of interviews in Palmerston North. So you go down, you fill out a little question sheet, and then you sit there and have an interview with a couple of the lecturers that are on the course. So that's them kind of just checking in, making sure that you're, I guess, a normal person who would be able to communicate well with patients, and that you've kind of got the right nature and kind of personality to do well in the job. I think I had provisional acceptance to my course in December, and then when all my NCA grades came out in January, I had confirmation, and I started the course like 2 weeks later, right at the start of February.
There's so many steps for you and them at UCOL to determine if this is going to be a good pathway, as compared to, like, I remember when I went to uni, you could go to the open day, you didn't have to. Like, you never actually had to step foot on the campus until your first day if you wanted, and so the drop-off rate was pretty significant. That's maybe, do you reckon that's specifically UCOL? Like, I don't know if you've heard from other people now in the industry who went to different places, or is that consistent across the schools?
Slight differences between each of them. So when I went through, there was 3 options. So there was Unitec, which runs up in Auckland. Their process is like an online application, and then they have a group interview day. So you go up and you do like group exercises. I think you have to do like a little writing thing and an interview.
I wouldn't like that.
And there was UCOL, so Palmerston North, and then there was ARA, which is the Polytechnic down in Christchurch, who also I think all of them do interviews. They're probably Zoom interviews now post-COVID, but all of them have some kind of interview process built into them. I'm not sure about so Auckland University started a degree, I think 3 or 4 years ago now. I haven't met anybody that's done that one yet, but I believe you go into that off the like pre-med health science year that they run.
Yeah, this is where I want to jump in, Monique, because I thought you were going to go first year medicine and then you were going to go off, but you're sounding like we had Rebecca Reesey, who did speech and language therapy and audiology yesterday. And I think her course was it's targeted the skill you're after by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Do you have, if that first year, say, doesn't go well, we'll talk to you soon about what you learned about, but do you have a lot of options to go, oh, it wasn't for me? Are you a bit stuck, or is it okay?
It depends where you go with it. So if you're transferring over to something like nursing, like the anatomy and the physiology that you learn in your first year still applies to some other health courses, but it's kind of once you're in, and you've kind of only got that pathway at the end.
Are you getting axed after first year, second year, or is it they take their cohort and they get you through?
So I think my year at UCOL had 250 applicants, somewhere around there, and they take 40 for the course. And once you're in the course, they really like to keep you in the course. So I found they did a really good job of looking after people, checking in. If you were really struggling with a certain like paper, then there would be a lot of support, or you could resit it the next year, because the course sizes are kind of dictated by placements. So because you do a placement every year in the hospital, they can only kind of take so many students to give you the rounded experience that you need. Once you're in, and they try to keep you in. I think we made it with most of our students through the class, a few people that left along the way. Once you're in, and they do a very good job of looking after you.
So I'm trying to think, Monique, to me, the difference in health science or being the doctor who starts dealing with the medicine and the treatment, you're there to identify only. Would that be right? Like, does that sound right?
So that is the biggest thing I probably explain to so many people. As the radiographer, your job is acquiring the imaging or assisting the radiologist. The radiologist is the doctor, so they're the one that had done their whole medical degree in 6 to 7 years training on top to become a radiologist. So they're the ones that interpret the imaging that you do and perform procedures under the guidance of X-rays. We essentially are, I joke and say I'm a fancy black and white photographer. And so, yeah, we acquire the images and they interpret the images.
That's great. Okay, cool. So what did you learn about in this course? So what would kids expect if they go, hey, this is sounding really cool. I love black and white photos. I love it. What do you learn about for your, is it 3 years, 4 years?
A 3-year degree. It's more full-time than like a university course. So we ran usually from late January, early February through into December, and somewhat follow like the school structure for like holidays. So you get like 2 weeks off throughout. But I think course was like 42 weeks of the year, like 40 to 42 weeks. So you are on the degree more often than like your friends that go to like university or I lived with people that went to Massey and it felt like they never had to go to course. Like they had a few lectures in a week. They could structure the week however they liked. And I was at UCole my first year, I think usually 30 to 36 hours a week in courses.
That's good to know, because there's some kids who would not expect, they expect the uni timetable. That's quite impressive. Wow.
So you don't get any choices about like what you're studying or like when you're taking the papers, or it's quite structured that you turn up and we're doing this today, followed by this, followed by this, followed by your lab. So you kind of get a timetable for like the term or the semester, and that's it. That's what you do. In terms of like content that we cover, big things you're learning anatomy, so like the structures of the human body. Physiology is like how the body works, so like how everything interacts together. So there's papers on anatomy and physiology together. You'll do a course on physics to start off with, so you understand radiation, essentially how it's created, how it works, what the effect is. Labs, so practical labs. Essentially, you go in and take X-rays on fake patients. So we have these things called phantoms. They're like plastic body parts or like resin kind of a bone set inside them. So you can put them there and you've got some old X-ray machines in the lab and you can practice positioning them. And then you learn to essentially like look at them. Do they meet the criteria? But you're also doing a lot of role play with your classmates. You fake X-ray each other all the time. You have whole conversations. You invent request forms. Essentially role play a whole scenario, switch the person out for a phantom, take the X-ray, and then process them, and you have to critique them and feedback them. So you spend a good portion of your week in the lab X-raying fake people. Once you're getting into second and third year, you start to look more at the kind of specialist areas that we go into. So that's when you're starting to learn about like what ultrasound, CT, MRI, nuclear medicine, mammography, kind of what they are, how their equipment works, and a little bit of kind of understanding like the images and what you're looking at. But a lot of those are fields that you kind of specialize in more once you finish the degree. What else do we do?
You can use an MRI, an ultrasound, a mammography.
So we come out qualified to perform X-rays with an X-ray machine, fluoroscopy, which is like video X-ray, the use of image intensifiers. So they are the X-ray machines that we use in theatre. So we go hang out with mostly the orthopedic team. So when they're like fixing bones, we are in there making sure they're putting the screws and the plates in the right place. So you're X-raying as they go. We also work often with the urology team. So finding kidney stones and helping stench ureters, so people's waterworks get working. So they're the two teams we probably work with the most in theatre. Yeah, base degree covers you to perform x-rays. Once you've got that qualification and that degree, you can do on-the-job training, which allows you to work in CT or in cath labs and interventional. So that's working with radiologists or cardiologists, essentially using x-rays to guide the placement of pacemakers, stents, all sorts of things like that. In terms of getting into, so we call them modalities. So they're the kind of different pathways you can take within radiology. We do postgraduate study to become MRI technicians, sonographers, so ultrasound, nuclear medicine technologists, mammographers, and I feel like I'm forgetting one. No, there's 4 of them. They are postgraduate study, which is done through the University of Auckland. You do a combo of like essentially on-the-job training and university papers to become qualified to do those areas. So we kind of get the basics when we're students, so we get an idea of whether or not we like it. And then you specialize further once you finish your degree.
Couple thoughts, couple questions. Just get like, not like heebie-jeebie, but like I'm hearing this and the idea of like placing stents and stuff like that's like, is there like blood? Does that happen? Like how, what state are people in? Varying levels?
It's a really mixed bag. So if you're working like privately or you're doing like GP referrals, your patients are usually like pretty intact.
Yeah, okay.
They're the ones that walk into your room and have a good chat with you. And then kind of as you start to progress through doing like hospital clinics, so like a fracture clinic, your patients are a little bit more broken and battered, your inpatients a little bit more, but we're also quite in the thick of it in like the emergency room. So kind of part of the diagnosis of patients involves laboratories, so lab testing, and usually I think the statistic is like 95% of patients will receive a radiology exam on admission to the hospital or within their admission to hospital. So we see almost everybody that gets admitted to hospital in whatever state they come in. The joy is, I can't say this without sounding really bad, most of the time in hospital, the patient is somebody else's responsibility. So we provide a service to the other services, a diagnostic service. You get your ED patient, like they are the responsibility of the emergency team. So the nurses and the doctors in the emergency department. Your patient's vomiting, you're like, here, have a vomit bag. Let me take you back to your nurse. So it's great in that aspect. I can't even remember where I was going with that.
Hey, Monique, I don't know whether you noticed, I saw an image recently on, I presume it's true, on Facebook, where it was an old X-ray woman and the state of her hand, because back in the day, whenever they turned the machine on in the morning, they would X-ray their own hand to see if it was working. And it was like 40 years of radiation on this hand, and one hand was normal and the other was this shriveled mess. I don't know whether that's true, but that obviously times have changed. Can I say, where have you or do you work? Are you basically most of you people, most radiographers, are they in hospitals? I know. And then where did this whakapapa ski field thing come from? Just work environment. Where are you?
So New Zealand kind of presents 2 opportunities. You've got public work and private work. So public would be based in a hospital, and that's doing fracture clinics, emergency departments, seeing inpatients, seeing people that have been referred to the hospital. Or you can go the private route. So that is working for a company like out in the community. They tend to be attached or like close to private hospitals or like a GP practice, a health centre. And those patients tend to be the ones that are doing well better. Well, I mean, you're seeing them in an outpatient setting. They've been referred by their GP or a specialist. So you've kind of got the 2 routes. Private tends to be more like office hours. So you're working kind of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You might have some weekends if you're like attached to an after hours clinic, or you've got like the public one where you're dealing with usually more unwell patients, and you're working shift work or on-call work a lot more often. But I think a lot of us find it more interesting and more challenging. But yeah, so you kind of got two options. Currently, I do work on the Mount Ruapehu, so I work for Whakapapa Ski Field. We also run a clinic over on Turoa, so I get to hang out in the clinic up the mountain and take x-rays of everybody that centered a little bit too hard while skiing or snowboarding.
How did that come about?
When I first qualified, I worked over in Tauranga, and a lot of the radiographers over there have been involved with the ski fields over the years. So we kind of knew it was an option, but haven't really considered it as something for me. I'm not the most sporty outdoors person, so it's a miracle I've made it the whole season without an injury. I'm very proud of myself. I've been locuming the last few years. So locums are kind of like what we call like a temp worker in the hospital. So essentially you're doing short-term contracts to cover staffing shortages, maternity leaves, changes to service. So essentially you are brought in by the hospital kind of as a contractor, and you work for them for however long they're specified in the contract. So I've been doing that over the last year, which means I'm a little bit more flexible with what I do for work. And I saw a job listing and thought, oh, I'm free. I can do that. That sounds like fun.
Was that locuming a conscious decision for lifestyle?
I kind of wanted to give it a go. I did 4-5 years working over in the Bay of Plenty, like quite settled in. And I guess I was getting kind of a little bit of a thirst to have some adventure. So I was like, it's a great way. Like, I've got the degree. Once you've got the degree, there's plenty of demand to go a lot of places. And locuming's a great way to essentially afford to go traveling with somebody else paying for it. So a lot of the time my contracts will cover relocating me, providing me accommodation. Sometimes if you're going more remote, you'll get a car as well. But it's just a really cool way to go see more of New Zealand. And I've done a little bit of work in Australia, and you kind of get to go somewhere for kind of 2 or 3 months at a time and have lots of adventures, see that area of the country, and then try somewhere else.
This is sounding gold. Because I'm even thinking you could go to the islands.
Potentially. I don't actually know. I know people that have volunteered over there. I don't know if anyone's worked over there. It is super, super common in our degree that you kind of qualify, you do a couple of years, and then a lot of people leave and go to Australia or the UK. So our qualification is recognised super easily in Australia and the UK. It's just a bit of paperwork to get it transferred over, and then you're kind of away and laughing. So it's really common. People do a couple of years in New Zealand, find their feet, and then head off overseas to have a bit of an adventure. Definitely. We lose a lot of people around the 2 or 3 year mark, and we hope that we get them back. Most of the time we do. But yeah, I went probably a little bit later than a lot of people. Yeah, I don't know. It's been neat. It's a fun opportunity. I don't know when I'll settle down again. There's always the possibility.
Well, I'm really curious because the same way in the beginning, Ludlam said when he got his rotator cuff MRI'd and he was freaking out. Like, I had a friend, this was in the States, but she had to do a cardiac MRI after COVID. They pumped in some fluid and she came out and she looked a little disturbed, to put it lightly, like it had been an experience. So what part, because this is sounding really fun, I just want to hone in a little bit on like dealing with patients, if it is like the MRI or whatever it is that are a little bit uncomfortable. How much does like, I would say personality is the right word, but how much time are you spending really comforting people, having to be quite patient if they are starting to feel uncomfortable? How much of a role does that play?
I think having empathy is a huge part of being a radiographer. So everybody that you meet has something going on. They're there for a reason. And a lot of times you can deal with some really heavy stuff with patients. So there's a lot of anxiety there for people on two fronts. I think the hospital healthcare front, it's my everyday, but it's not their everyday. And so what's normal to me isn't normal to them. And it can be quite a uncomfortable, confronting thing to come into a healthcare setting and to have a procedure that you're unfamiliar with. And there's all sorts of things that go on, like the MRI machine's really loud and noisy. Our CT scanner, we give an injection of contrast dye, which gives like a real hot flush feel through your body. And that hot flush can make it feel like you're wetting your pants. That causes a lot of distress to people. That's not a comfortable sensation. So you do things a lot of time kind of just trying to get alongside people and explain what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, what's going to happen, and just trying to kind of get ahead of those experiences so they feel informed and comfortable along the way. Another big part of it is that people are there because something isn't right. So there's a lot of anxiety of, what if it's cancer? What if it's this? Like, it can be quite scary to have a big fall, break a lot of bones, have an accident. I work mainly in CT when I'm in the hospitals, and a lot of our patients that we're seeing there are oncology patients, so people that are on their journey through the oncology and the cancer system. So it can be like a really tough day for them, because essentially this is what is telling them whether things are getting better or worse. So you're definitely dealing with a lot of emotions. So I think it's really important that you're somebody that can kind of get alongside people, be calm, be empathetic, and just kind of show them a little bit of love and care when they need it. A lot of our patients, we don't spend a lot of time with them. If we're x-raying somebody, we could have them out the room in kind of 2 to 5 minutes spending what we're doing, or we spend a little bit longer with them if we're preparing them for procedures or preparing them for like a CT scan. You're going through a consent form, you're explaining what's happening, so you spend a little bit more time with them. But you do kind of see patients quite transiently. You see them for just a little kind of portion of their journey through the health system, but you're a really important part to kind of keeping their diagnosis and their health journey continuing, which is really neat. But it's also really fun. I enjoy it when we kind of accidentally manage to follow a patient through the system. So you might see them in the emergency department when they first break a bone, and then they go up to theatre a few days later to have a surgery, and you get to go up and do the x-rays during the surgery. Then you might come across them a few weeks later when they're getting followed up in fracture clinic. So it's really fun when you actually get to see your patients again and see what's happening. Likewise, our oncology patients, they're often getting their scans kind of every 2 to 3 months, sometimes kind of once a year. And if you've been somewhere long enough, you get to see people come back and kind of follow them along, which is what I really enjoy about it.
I think that's for a lot of people who'll be listening to this or watching it on YouTube, and even Grace, I'd imagine. You're the exact person I want.
Yeah.
Dealing with me, you sound gold, which, and I hope all of them are like you. I think the only real difference I can pick up when we had Rebecca Reesey, the audiologist, she was able in her career to go do her day's work, go home, switch off, completely not even think about work, turn up the next day and get started. I imagine there's a little bit of fade over in your job. Could be someone like me, Grace, even a young child, like you said, it could be cancer, it could be something bad. There must be times where you do go home and you think, shit.
Mm.
That empathetic side you've got, which makes you good, will also make you, some of that stuff could get on top of you. It would be one thing I think I'd like you to talk about, because kids would need to comprehend that, maybe. Is that true?
Absolutely. We are involved kind of in the thick of it with patients. Like, it's part of like a trauma response in a hospital. So somebody has a huge accident and we need all the resources. A page goes out. Everybody turns up at once. It's absolute bedlam. We're getting in there, we're trying to get x-rays done, or we're seeing them in a CT scanner pretty quickly. And that can sometimes be really traumatic, the things that you see and the stories that people have. So that's definitely something to consider, is that you are often really involved in these things. But because we kind of act as a service to other services within the hospital, we're not always involved with like the debrief that might happen afterwards. So often when something big happens, everyone that was involved will sit down, have a chat about what happened, the actions that happened, the outcome for the patient, and they kind of get a chance to sit there and debrief. We aren't often involved with that, but we rely quite a lot on our colleagues that we work with in radiology. Is that a lot of people, I think, we're good at understanding that we have to be there to support each other, but sounds bad to say you get used to it, but you do. It is a job where when I finish my shift, I get to leave it all at work. Nothing comes home with me. I can't do anything for the patient once I'm finished with them. I've handed them back to somebody else's care. So it is nice that my work doesn't follow me home, but you do sometimes have points where you wonder what happened to somebody, because while we do get that little bubble that we can sometimes follow people along in their journey, other times you saw that person and you never saw them again, and you can't help but wonder what happens to them. But yeah, there's definitely resources. We get like counselling support through work if we need it. And yeah, I said, I think us as colleagues are really good at looking after each other. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm getting the feeling, one, you'd recommend it. So one, you'd recommend it to kids. My only fear is the physics sounds really important. It was part of the application, and some schools don't have physics. I don't know whether you'd know whether if you're at a school and there isn't physics, has that cut you off at the knees? Again, I don't know whether you'd know. Would you know that?
Don't necessarily think it would impact you that much to not have done physics. We have a lot of people in our degree that are mature students or on their second degree and have come from something completely different, and don't have like a sciencey background, and they do start it's faster paced, I think, than what you learn in high school, but they do start right from the start and it'll follow you through. I took chemistry as well, and there are some things that I found from chemistry carried over to the principles of what we learn with radiation. So I did find that kind of helpful. If you can't get physics, chemistry also works, but not super intensive. A little bit different over the different degrees as to how intense the physics was. I thought it was pretty okay at UCole, and I think most people would cope without having done it in high school.
Cool. Before Grace does, she asked a nice sticky last question, but I think for the face of what we're looking at, you've just been brilliant. It's interesting, we're about to slide on very shortly to a nurse, and the way you talk about the system and people who bring new people and then take care of them, it's going to be really cool for Grace and I now to sit through the story of a nurse, because all of you are in it together. It's really sort of resonated with me. It's going to make a lot more sense. I never thought of it that way. I mean, that might sound stupid, but can I just say, absolutely awesome job. Again, you're the one person I would want smiling when I arrived with my broken whatever. So yeah, and thank you for your time for this, because I think, like I said, a lot of kids have requested it, and that there is gold. So thanks heaps.
Monique, before my sign-off question, is there anything we didn't ask you that you think we should have, or a bit of an open mic?
I think we've covered pretty much all of it. One thing, I'm going to plug other people's jobs. So radiology falls under the allied scientific and technical umbrella in the hospital. I think a lot of people think hospital, they think doctors, they think nurses, and a lot of the other specialties and jobs within the hospital, unless you have contact with them, you don't know about them. So just anyone that's considering a health job, look at all the options. There's tons of us that are hiding away in the hospital doing all sorts of really cool things. And there's anesthetic technologists, embryologists, hand therapists. My sister's an occupational therapist, orthoptists, orthotists, perfusionists, play specialists, wheelchair technicians. There is so much more happening in a hospital than I think a lot of people realise unless they have contact with the service. So definitely have a look around, have a look at all your options. I think all of us that kind of work in this area, we're the small guys in the hospital, but we're also we love new people. We always need new people. So if you're interested in any of those, just get in contact with somebody locally, and pretty much anyone will be happy to have a chat to you and explain what they do for their job. But definitely look at all the options.
That's brilliant, and it's so true. Once you get into an industry, you go oh, I didn't realize there was blah, blah, blah. Like, we even asked, we had Michael Wilkinson, who's a sailor, and he was talking about all the different team members and how they stack up and how it just keeps the ecosystem moving, which is, I was visualizing when you said you all rush into the room and you take them there and they go here. And then when we have the nurse, we'll hear more. But yeah, we have some more interviews to do for sure. But the last question, Monique, is if you could go back to you in year 12 or 13 and just give you advice instead of the general public, Monique to Monique, what advice would you be giving yourself?
Stay in touch. I think I did a really bad job of staying in touch with people from high school. And like with all the moving that I do, I meet lots of new people, I meet lots of new friends, but I'm not in touch with many people from my high school days and from growing up in Cambridge anymore. And I kind of regret that. I wish somebody had kind of given me a nudge as I left high school and reminded me that those friendships and relationships are really important. So yeah, everything works out in the end, but stay in touch would be my biggest advice to myself.
Thank you.
Wicked. Oh, look, all the best, Monique, and thank you so much. And we may get in touch about some of those other job things because, they sound wicked. And then, I'll get some recommendations for some names. But take care, enjoy the ski field, and
happy birthday.